Thank you for your very kind words. It's great to be back. What holds reality together? It's really going to go into a depth of why the Yevonim legislated against Bris Milah, as we're going to explain. We know that the Yevonim legislated against Chodesh, Shabbos, and Milah, against Kiddush HaChodesh and against Shmiras HaShabbos and against Bris Milah. And it's very interesting to note that every Chanukah, we have a Shabbos Chanukah, we have a Rosh Chodesh Chanukah, Rosh Chodesh Tevis. And the truth is, I'm sure somewhere in the Jewish world, there's some Jewish baby having a bris, but the truth is that Hanukkah in itself contains the message of bris, as we're going to explain, because it has 8 days. Like the Shmona Yemei Milah, like we say in the Seder night, Shmona Miodea, Shmona Niodea, Shmona Yemei Milah, which means to say that the concept of 8 is really intrinsic and inherent to the idea of Bris Milah. We know that when David HaMelech remembered the Bris Milah, when he was not able to do any mitzvahs because he was in the bathhouse, when he came out, he said, Lam Natseach al Hashminis, praise for the 8th, for the mitzvah, Shenitna B'Shmini, Milah Shenitna B'Shmini. But it goes more than that. The Gemara Megillah discusses the structure of our Shmona Esrei. Why each bracha, why it is in the order that it is. And it points out that Rifa'enu, the bracha for Refuah, is the 8th bracha of the Shmona Esrei. And the Gemara says because Refuah came down to the world for Bris Milah. After a Bris Milah, person's, the baby needs a Refuah. And so Refuah came to the world for Milah, which is on the 8th day. So from all these different chazals that I'm quoting, and there are probably many, many more, we see that the concept of 8 is very inherent to the idea of Bris Milah. And and we're going to come back, we're going to revisit this Gemara in a few minutes, that the whole idea of healing came to the world, for Bris Milah, and that's why Refaim was the 8th bracha of Shmona Esrei. You understand that what that implies is that if there wouldn't be such a thing as Bris Milah, there will be no such thing as Refuah. Refuah came to the world purely for Bris Milah. So it's here for everything else, once it came down to the world for Bris Milah, something that we're going to think about and discuss. So, speaking of the 8th, we know the 8th day of Chanukah is, we call it Zos Chanukah, because if you follow the laning, that we lane daily, so we make sure to finish all the psukim of Chanukah Sanesiim, what they originally brought for the original Chanukah Sabayis in the Midbar, for the first 12 days of the month of Nisan. Each Nasi brought what he brought, his offerings for Chanukah Sabayis. And at the end, on the 12th day, after the 12th Nasi brings his carbon, so then the Torah gives a grand total. Zos Chanukah Samizbeach b'yomi mashach. So this is Chanukah Samizbeach on the day that it was anointed, meaning when it was finalized, and it gives the grand total of all the different karbanos, that were offered. Something which any person could have done himself. Add up, tallied up the figures, added up the numbers, and the Torah felt it, necessary for reasons that we need to explain, to actually write up the totals of how much, all the karbonos total together. We could have done the math. It's everyone brought the same carbon each day, so we could have done it times 12 by ourselves. And that's Zos Chanukah Samizbeach, and that's also why the 8th day of Chanukah, where we lay in that part, we call it Zos Chanukah, and there is a halacha for the 8th day of Chanukah. It's in the Torah. It's a real halacha that on the 8th day there is a mitzvah to do on the 8th day. On the 8th night we light 8 candles, but on the 8th day we're supposed to take all the wicks of all the days, whatever's left over, in the menorah, any leftover oil and leftover wicks from the whole Chanukah, and burn them together. Now, the reason why we have to burn them is because we can't just throw them in the garbage because they were used for a mitzvah. But you're not obligated to hold on to them forever. They don't require a geniza, because it's not divrei Torah like Sifrei Torah and Tefillin and Mezuzah. They don't require Geniza, but they do have to be disposed of honorably, so we burn them. And the halacha in the Torah is to burn all of them together. And that, again, echoes the laning that we laned that same morning about adding up all the karbanos that were brought on 12 different days together. And this is on the 8th day, pulling it all together, all the wicks of all the 8 days. Just like on that day in the laning, the Torah adds up all the karbanos of all the 12 days. It's something to look into and think about. Now, the miracle happened with the menorah. Now, the classical menorah that we're supposed to make for the Beis HaMikdash has interesting halacha. It's, even though it's 7 distinct branches, right? There's 7, which are the 7 candles. Right? It has to be miksha achas. It has to be made out of a solid piece of gold. Right? It can't be made up of parts. It has to be made up of a solid piece of gold. And we have to understand what that represents. But Chazal tell us on those words, miksha te'aseh, it has to be made out of one solid piece. So miksha miloshen kasheh, you could also read it as being difficult, that Moshe Rabbeinu had difficulty understanding the menorah. Until HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to project him an image of the menorah, and then he was able to make it. There is another Lashon Chazal that it was so difficult for Moshe that he just had to Hashem said, forget it, just throw a piece of gold into the fire, and the menorah will come out, and they darshan from the word miksha ti'aseh. There's an extra yud. Ti'aseh is a Lashon PL, it was made, meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu had, in the end, had to make it himself, because it was too difficult for Moshe Rabbeinu. So there's something to look into, that same, where the Pashup Pshat is, that it has to be a solid piece of gold. In that idea, in that halacha, Chazal see an allusion to why the menorah was a mystery to Moshe Rabbeinu. What is the mystery to Moshe Rabbeinu? What does it have to do with the halacha that the menorah has to be a solid piece of gold? Now, always, there's never a year, in my memory, I don't think it's ever possible. If anyone remembers otherwise, please let me know. Parshas Miketz, always Shabbos Chanukah. If there's 2 Shabbos Chanukahs, so it's Vayeshev Miketz, but Miketz is always Shabbos Chanukah. So we look at Paro's dreams. Right? There's the 7 good cows, the 7 bad cows. Right? There's the 7 good stalks and the 7 bad stalks. And there's besides the fact that these are good and these are bad, there's another difference between them, a more subtle difference. If you don't read the psukim carefully, you would miss it. Right? It says by the 7 good cows, Vatirena ba'achu, they all graze together. They're all grazing in the swamp, or some ba'achu made some taichit, translated as in brotherhood. It doesn't say that by the 7 bad cows. Right? And it says by the 7 good weeks, Sheva shibalim tovot olot bekana echad. They came out of the same stem. Right? The 7 good stalks. Right? It doesn't say that by the bad stalks. It just says, that they were shtufos kadim, they were empty, they were not full. It doesn't mention that that they came from the same stalk. So we see that by the good ones are together, right? And the bad ones, we don't see the togetherness. So this is another remez to Chanukah. You imagine what the 7 stalks coming out of one stem look like. What did it look like? Look like a menorah. It's clearly another remez to Chanukah, and apropos that Parshas Miketz, and there are many other connections. Why it's Parshas Miketz is always Shabbos Chanukah, but that's something amazing to look into. Right? The good has the togetherness, right, and the and the bad does not. As the pasuk says, in Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos, speaking of Shabbos, right? So it says, the pasuk says, "Yispardu kol poalei oven." Right? All evildoers should be separate. Right? They should be bepirud. Evildoers cannot get together. Like the Mishnah says in Sanhedrin, the Pizur, Yafil, Rishayim, Yafilam, when for Rishayim, for them to be scattered is good for them and good for the world. They should not be together, and it seems that they can't hold it together. As the Mishnah says in Avos, Knesia, L'Shem Shamayim, Sofalis Kayim, Kol Knesia Shem Shamayim, Ain't Sofalis Kayim, an ingathering that's for L'Shem Shamayim, that's an ingathering, that's a coming together that could endure. Right? And, an ingathering that's not L'Shem Shamayim, Ain't Sofalis Kayim. And this something should immediately ring by association. Right? Marriage. Chazal tell us, Zachu Shechina Shruya B'neim, if they're virtuous, so the divine presence dwells in them. In Lo Zachu Eishochat, if not, they're consumed by fire. That there's some type of relationship between how righteous you are and how successful your marriage will be, and we will explore that in just a few minutes. But again, bringing that goodness, as in spiritual goodness, the goodness of Li Kirvas Elokim, Li Tov, like the David HaMelech says, to be the goodness of being close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's like the glue that holds things together. Right? In evil, the things can't stick together. Right? And I'd like to discuss that a little bit. Right? Understand why that is. Yeah? You have to ask, what is Achdus? Right? What is togetherness? Right? You have a brick, let's say it's one solid brick, and it's and you have the same type of brick, right? But you pulverize it. So all the granules are together in a solid brick, and the other one, the granules are all separate. And you put each one on a scale, right? All the granules of one brick on one side of the scale, and the solid brick on the other. And of course, again, stressing that the granules were from an identical brick, just it was pulverized, right? So, and you didn't lose a single grain. So you put the two on the scales. They will weigh the same, right? They will balance each other out, even though one is ba'achdus and one isn't. One has all the granules together, right? And the other one does not. Right? The one that has the added factor of achdus doesn't make it weigh anymore. Right? If you have 10 units consolidated or 10 units separate, they still their weight is the same. Right? Being together is not something that causes them to weigh more. The point that I'm driving at is that achdus is not something physical. If achdus would be something physical, then things being ba'achdus ought to weigh more than things when they're separate. Now, the achdus is not a physical factor. It's something spiritual. Right? What is unity? As this is going back to the theme of tonight's lecture, and then we'll understand what Bris Milah is all about, and many other things. Right? What is achdus? What holds things together? What is that? It's not something physical. Right? And this becomes a lot more pronounced when you talk about something like a nation, all separate individuals, yet one nation. In what way are they one? What makes them one nation? Right? So you would say, there's a certain national spirit that holds them together. Right? You would agree on that. Right? What holds as to bring a very gross mashal, and we're going to show that the mashal doesn't come anywhere near the nimshal. We say the Republican Party is one party. Right? Well, because there's a certain spirit, certain ideals, right, that they all identify with. Right? And but here's the thing, as we know, parties fall apart. They don't endure forever. There's like what we call pseudo spirit, right? It's and where we find this was by Migdal Bavel. Right, the first time we find achdus in the Torah, and everyone knows that that's why they weren't punished as severely as the Dor HaMabul. Still, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even though it wasn't the real Achdus, right, but nonetheless, HaKadosh Baruch Hu valued it nonetheless and gave them a commuted sentence, and he didn't exterminate them like the Dor HaMabul, he just scattered them. Right, but that scattering was inevitable. It was, as the Maral explains, it was a Knessia Shelo L'Shem Shemaim. It wasn't done for L'Shem Shemaim. As we said before, that Mishnah and Avos, but they said, Nase Lanu Shem. Let's make for ourselves a common cause. Nase Lanu Shem, not Shem Shemaim. Nase Lanu Shem will be our own cause. And they united around the cause of the Migdal. Right, the tower was their cause. Right? And of course it fell apart, because all ideas that are not eternal truths, at one point those ideas are going to become passé. Right? Why do civilizations fall? Right? They didn't fall because the whole people got exterminated. There's, still, I'm sure, descendants of the Greeks that we defeated on Chanukah. There's still descendants of theirs walking the earth. Right? They're somewhere out there. Right? Definitely descendants of Edom. Right? It's not that these civilizations disappeared because they were exterminated. They weren't exterminated at all. That wasn't the reason why the civilization collapsed. The spirit that held them together as the Greek Empire, people lost that spirit. Right? It just dissipated. And that's why the nation fell apart. Right? And not because the people were eliminated, people were around. The spirit that held them together as a spiritual entity called the Greek Empire, the national spirit, died. And that's how a civilization dies. Right? And with this we get to the idea of why Am Yisrael's Am HaNetzach, we're the eternal people that can never die. Because what makes us a people? What holds us together? A famous statement of Rav Sadia Gaon, Ein Amenu Uma Ela B'Toraso. What makes us one nation is our Torah. Our Torah holds us together. Right, by Matan Torah, Vayichan Sham Yisrael Keneged Ahar, we stood facing Kish Echad, B'Lev Echad, like one person with one heart. The facing Har Sinai with the anticipation of receiving the Torah, that's what unifies us. And that's an amazing thing. The Jewish people are such a phenomenon that baffles everybody. We're one nation, so committed to each other, right? And more than any other nation in the world. The brotherhood and love that there is between Yidden, Mamish, V'achtarecha Kamocha, literally, right? Literally, something you don't find. And is it because that we're like-minded, right? And we live in the same neighborhoods and we speak the same language? Not at all. Not at all. Just the opposite, right? There are Ashkenazim, there are Sfardim, and until recently, they lived in totally different regions of the world, different language, different mentality, right? And from our inception, 12 different tribes, right? Each one with their own Nusach HaTfilah, the Arizal tells us, they had their own, each one had their own Bezdin. It was one grand rabbinical Bezdin, it sat on Har HaBayis, but every Shevet had its own Sanhedrin, its own regional Sanhedrin. Made 12 different tribes, so definitely there was, despite the tribalism, right, still one nation in total Achdus, because our national spirit is not an idea like communism that's in today, but out of style, out of vogue tomorrow. Right? What holds us together as one nation is the Torah. That's our national spirit. That's what holds us together. And that's why we're one nation, despite the fact that we don't have any elements of what would hold a regular nation together. What makes a regular nation is that there's certain prerequisites. Obviously the capstone is the national spirit that we spoke about. But the national spirit is not going to be chal, not even temporarily, right, unless you have a bunch of people living on the same landmass, speaking the same language, roughly of the same mindset, and then have some type of common ancestry. Those are all the ingredients that you need. And after that, you could have like something that, a national spirit that binds them together. But there's no reason to expect to make one nation out of people scattered across the globe, different mentalities, belonging to different tribes. And Am Yisrael is that. It has been that for thousands of years, unfortunately, right? And still one people, because Our spirit is the Torah, and the Torah is forever. It's Nitzchi, and that's why Am Yisrael is the Am HaNetzach, we're the eternal nation. Now, Am Yisrael can never go extinct. Because as we said, explained before, what makes a civilization go extinct is not because the people were killed out, it's because the national spirit died. That's why that nation falls and a different nation comes in place, because they unite around a different national idea. Right? Am Yisrael is united under the Torah, and the Torah is forever. Right? And the Torah is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? So now, so he's forever, his Torah is forever. And what this was sort of getting into, the famous Zohar, right, that in Parshas Achremos, Daf Ayin Gimel, right, that there are Gimel Mitkashrin Da B'da, there are three levels, they're intertwined with each other, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Torah, and Klal Yisrael. Right, that just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one, right, so also there's one Torah, there's no two Torahs, there's only one Torah that came from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's why Mi Ka'amcha Yisrael Goy Echad Baretz. Ato Echad V'Shimcha Echad, Umi Ka'amcha Yisrael Goy Echad Baretz. We're called the one nation. Even though we're 12 different tribes, and we've subdivided into other groups like Hasidim, Misnagdim, Ashkenazim, Sfardim, still called one nation. Because what binds us together is the one Torah. And we're more one than any other nation in the world. Right? More united and more committed to each other. Right? And that's where Achdus comes from. You know what Achdus is, right? Achdus really is something spiritual that's siphoned, originally from Hashem Echad, and Hashem, passed over that energy by Torah Achas Yelachem, right? The one Torah, and that's where the whole unifying force that there is in reality is really from the Torah. And how so? Because everyone knows. Istako b'oraiso bora alma. Right? The world really was emerged from the Torah. The Torah is not just a blueprint, but the Chazal tell us it was actually the energy from which reality was fashioned from. It's not just the map. It's us having the Torah gives us the map to reality, but the Torah itself, the Torah that was in heaven, black fire and white fire, that was given to Am Yisrael, was also the original point of origin of all of reality. And any type of achdus that there is in reality is really siphoned from the Torah, for which all reality branched out from. Now we, who were given the Torah, as directly to us, that's why we're Goy Echad. And that's why it's very, very important for Am Yisrael to be ba'achdus. That is why, the Arizal says, and it's the Sidurim copy down, that every day, before you daven in the morning, you have to say, Areni mekabel atzmi mitzvahs v'haftal l'recha kamocha. All right, I accept upon myself the mitzvah v'haftal l'recha kamocha. You're supposed to say that before you daven. All right, because if there's a period in Am Yisrael, if God forbid the Jewish people are in any way, divided, it has terrible, terrible consequences for reality. Right, because since we are directly rooted to the Torah, which is the root of reality, any period in Am Yisrael causes cracks in reality itself. And tefillah is when we're coming to fix reality. Right, we dive into HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give us everything that we need, everything that the world needs. Right? That's what we're davening for. How can you seriously do your avoda if you're just a piece of reality? If you're not, b'shalom with your fellow Jew, so you fragmented reality, and your tefillah can't help the whole world because you've cut yourself off. You fragmented yourself. Right? So you have to makabel yourself the mitzvah v'aftarecha kamocha. Right before you daven. Right, before you come to save the world, make sure that all the pieces are pulled together, that you're in the network and everything is pulled together, and that's how your tefillah can help yourself and the whole world. But if you are fractured, right, and you're cut off, right, so your tefillah won't help the whole world. And our tefillah is supposed to be, for not just for our sake, but for the sake of all Jews and for the sake for the whole world. So now with this, we're getting into the the idea of I think we already explained. I think it's already after what we laid forth. It's very apparent why Achdus is only in the good. So in Paro's, in his dream, right, the good cows are together, right. The 7 good stalks, they come out of the same stem, right. Because what is good, it comes from the Torah. Ki lekach tov nasati lachem. Torah is called the good merchandise Hashem gave us. Comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, whose whole rotzen is to be mative. So therefore, in the tov, there is achdus. So now, the light of the menorah, right, as we know, ki ner mitzvah, v'torah or. Right, for a candle is a mitzvah and Torah is light. The light represents the Torah, and the Goyen explains ner mitzvah. The difference between ner mitzvah and Torah or. Ner mitzvah is Torah shebal peh. Torah or is Torah shebechsav. Right, the ner mitzvah is that refers to the Torah shebal peh per se. And that's also where Chazal tell us, and the Arizal is very makbanis that we learn only Torah Shebal Peh at night, and Torah Shebal Peh is learned only during the day. Torah or for daytime when the light is shining, but nighttime we need a candle is the time of Torah Shebal Peh. Right, but or could refer to natural light. Right, Ner is artificial light; it's man-made light. Right, and that's the Torah Shebal Peh, that even though it starts from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but he passes it through the filter of the Chachamim, and everyone has the right to, say Chidushay Torah, because of how the Torah Shebal Peh is filtered through Knesset Yisrael. Right, it's like, all light originally comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu Be'etzem created candlelight. Be'etzem, right? He created all the laws of physics from which we make fire. But of course, that the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created candlelight only is revealed through the Adam who makes the candle and lights the candle. So also Torah Shebal Peh, of course, is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it only gets revealed through Klal Yisrael. Beside, it gets revealed from the Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam. Right? Another thing, it's called the candle is our neshama. It's called the candle of Hashem. Right? The light of Torah Shebal Peh shines, through our neshamas. We are the candles that make the Torah Shebal Peh shine. and so the Torah Shebal Peh, which is in Knesset Yisrael, it wasn't meant to be contained in books. It's Torah Shebal Peh. Right? Torah Shebechsav was meant to be in books. Torah Shebal Peh was meant to rest in the people, per se. We only, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he put the Mishnah in a book form so it shouldn't be forgotten. And that's why they were matir to write down Torah Shebal Peh. But originally, by original intent, it was meant to be carried in the people, and the spirit of Torah Shebal Peh still remains carried in the people, even though the Mishnah is printed and the Talmud is printed. Really, the spirit of Torah Shebal Peh still lays in the people. Translations of the Gemara is not going to get you very far, but that's another topic. We'll leave it for another time. Right? But this goes further reinforces. Right, the idea of why Am Yisrael has to be ba'achdus, because there's a whole aspect of the singular Torah that's manifest in Klal Yisrael, and it's one Torah. It's one Torah. There are no two Jewish religions. There's only one Jewish religion. Right, so that Torah has is the detailed halachas are in the Torah Shebal Peh. It's in the people. That's why the people have to be ba'achdus, because Knesset Yisrael is the body that holds the Torah Shebal Peh. Right, and it's one Torah. You can't, chas v'shalom, splinter into separate religions. That's why Am Yisrael has to be b'achdus. Right, and that's what the light of the menorah represents. With this, we can understand the secret, but we're not done yet. But we're getting there. We can understand a little bit of why the menorah had to be miksha achas. Yeah, 7 separate branches. Yeah, 7 separate branches, but one solid piece of gold. Yes, there's room for Jews to have different opinions, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, but it's Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim. Right? They're both, the different opinions are both the same word, they're both from the same living God. Both words are the same living God, so it's 7 separate candles. Yes, 7 separate candles, but it's all carved out of one solid piece of gold. Miksha achas. Right? We have to be a perfectly unified people. Right? Because the Torah that we're carrying is a unified Torah. We can't have the Torah, chas v'sholem, splinter into separate religions. And that would happen if Am Yisrael would be splintered. So then the Torah would splinter. Right? We have to be ba'achdus like the Torah. So the Torah Shebal Peh represented by The menorah is to be miksha achas, solid piece of gold. Right? But now we're going to take it a step deeper, and understand Am Yisrael's unique mission in the world, right? And what the Greeks were so insanely jealous of, and how this all gets back to Bris Milah. But bear with me. But Achdus, right? So we said it's not something physical; it's something spiritual. Something ba'achdus doesn't weigh more than something that's bepirud. If it's the same sum of parts, where the parts are together or the parts are apart, they'll weigh the same. So the togetherness, like we explained, is spiritual. But nonetheless, right? This, the thing that's ba'achdus has a milah that the thing bepirud, the thing that's not ba'achdus, doesn't have. It has something the other one doesn't have, but that advantage is not a physical advantage. It's a spiritual advantage. The togetherness is definitely an additional factor, but let's get this straight. It's an additional factor, but it's not one more piece. It's not one more piece. It is the spirit that holds all the pieces together. It's the miksha achas. It's the togetherness that the cows grazed in. It's the singular stalk that all the singular stem, rather, that all the 7 stalks branch out of. So there's definitely an added factor. This is the concept of the eighth. The concept of the eighth is not something physical. Eighth, everyone knows the famous, what was popularized by the Maharal, but it's, the Maharal is just saying what was encoded in Chazal. Everyone knows, 7 is Teva, right? 7 is nature, the eighth is L'mal min HaTeva. When we say, the eighth, 8 as opposed to 7, we're not talking about 7 plus 1. That's not what we mean. We call it the eighth because it's another aspect, but it's not another piece. Let's get this straight. It's another aspect, but it's not an additional piece. So it's 8 in the sense that there's something there more than in the 7. The 7 are pieces. Let's get this straight. The 7 that we call nature, they're pieces. Like the 7 branches of the menorah, pieces. Right? Separate units. The eighth is not another piece. The eighth is the unifying spirit. We call it the eighth because it's something in addition to, because it's something that the 7 doesn't have. The 7 is lacking spirit. Right? The eighth is the spirit, right? That's going to hold everything together. That's what the eighth is all about. Right? Achdus, right? The heavenly, the revelation of the heavenly that holds everything together. Right? It's a mystery, right, to the whole world. Right? The scientific world, I mean to say. What holds the world together? Like the the title of tonight's shir, and now you see where I was going with all this. Right? At least you see part of the way. We're not done yet. Right? But it's a mystery. What holds the world together? There's contradictory forces in reality. Right? Fire and water. And all other types of energies that negate each other. Right? Everything pulling in its own direction. Right? Everything pulling its own direction, and if you would force them to be in the same place in the same time, they would cancel each other out. What holds the universe together? An amazing thing. Right? And it's such a complex system because there's togetherness, where things supplement each other. Right? And yet everything also is allowed to express its individuality. Right? Fire doesn't have to compromise with water and be something like lukewarm, Fire could be fire in full its intensity, and water be water and be ice. Right? Everything is together in a cooperative relationship, in a unified universe, while retaining its special individuality. You know what this is like the menorah. 7 separate, distinct branches, but it's all made out of one solid piece of gold. Right? And Chazal addressed this. We mentioned one Mishnah before. Knessia l'shem shamayim sofel iskayim, the ingathering, kinus, pulling things together if it's l'shem shamayim. So it's shem shamayim that holds the world together. But now, how do you also make it that while you hold the world together, that these forces, since you're forcing them to stay together, and you're not letting them fly each one in its own direction, forcing them to stay together, why don't they negate each other? Why don't they cancel each other out? So that's another Mishnah. machlokes l'shem shamayim. There's such a thing as machlokes l'shem shamayim, like Hillel and Shammai. They had differences of opinion, but it's l'shem shamayim. And Chazal say about that sofel iskayim. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel never neutralized each other until this day. Nearly 2,000 years later. Oh, really, mamish, almost 2,000 years later, right? We're still learning. Might even be more than 2,000 years since the original Hillel and Shammai. Anyway, they were still learning both of their opinions. They have not negated each other, right? It's sofel iskayim. That machlokes will endure forever. They're not going to. There'll be two schools of thought. They're not going to cancel each other out, right? One is not going to overrule the other. Not cancel the other one out. It's amazing, right? And that's also from the same thing called shem shamayim, the same midah of shem shamayim that holds the knessia together. Right, the divine name, that's also what keeps things, each one, retaining its individuality. And that's all expressed in the Torah Shebaal Peh, where we have machlokas, and it's still Elu Ve'elu Divrei Kimchaim, and it's all called one Torah. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel did not cause the Torah to splinter two separate religions. There are two schools of thought in the same religion. It's Elu Ve'elu Divrei Kimchaim. It is amazing. But it's no less amazing than reality itself. That so many different forces, and they somehow are a integrated universe while retaining their individuality. But you know where that came from? That came from the Torah. That came from the Torah Shebaal Peh. It came from the Istako Boraisa Bora Alma. That allows, for different opinions, and each one, everyone will have their individuality, and still one integrated whole. Amazing. All right. So now, and this is all called, the eighth, because we know the natural world is made just like there were 7 days of creation, right? In the ancients, they had divided up the wisdoms in 7. The ancient thinkers, and also in our Sforim, also they divide everything up into 7s, because the natural world is a world of 7s. Right, it's all rooted, of course, in the fact that it was created in 7 days. But the world of 7s, though that's identifying the pieces. You see the pieces, right? And that, even like I said, the Greek philosophers also divided up everything into 7s, because those are the pieces that you could identify. What's elusive is the spirit, the unifying spirit that holds it all together, and that's the 8th. And that's and that's what Bris Milah is about. Right? What Bris Milah is about, that Chazal say that the whole world stands in the schus of Bris Milah. Im lo brisi yomam v'layla chuko shemayim v'aretz lo samti. If not for my covenant day and night, the laws of heaven and earth I would have not put in place. The Navi says. So on the word im lo brisi. So some, learn it that's talking about Bris Milah. Some learn that's going on the Torah, right? Stako Baraisa Bara Alma. The Torah is what holds the world together, like we explained, right? And they come from the same root, as I'm about to explain, right? The Bris and the Torah come from the same root. The Torah was given at the end of on the 50th day, at the end of 7 weeks. At the end of 7 weeks, meaning on the 50th day is when you break out of 7s and you go into 8. Now, parallel to the idea of Bris Milah that's on the 8th. Or let's take it from another angle. We were, all of humanity were B'nai Noach. And B'nai Noach, by no coincidence, have how many mitzvahs? How many mitzvahs B'nai Noach have? It's easy. 7. They have 7 mitzvahs. Because if you take a look at what a guy's world, even a good guy, the Ben Noach is always in Lashon of Chazal is always the good guy, right? Their role in reality, right, is to just keep out of trouble. Take a look at their mitzvahs, right? Don't steal, don't kill, don't commit adultery, have a justice system, don't be cruel, and eat Aver Minachai, right? And don't do Avodah Zarah, and don't be disrespectful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's basically all keeping out of trouble, right? But there's nothing in their value system that does more than just, stay out of trouble, right? Right? They don't do anything supernatural with their mitzvahs. They don't. Supernatural means to reveal the spirit that holds the world together. That's going to bring the world to tikkun by causing these separate forces of reality to supplement each other. That's where tikkun is rooted. Now, who is the first non-Ben Noach in the world? Right? Someone that started, that broke rank with the Bnei Noach, Avram Avinu. Right? He got chosen. He didn't get all Taryag mitzvahs, but he got, by no coincidence, a 8th mitzvah. All of humanity had 7 mitzvahs. He got an 8th mitzvah. And by no coincidence, that 8th mitzvah is at the end of 8 days to do Bris Milah. And from Avram Avinu, Chazal say, starts a new era called Beis Alofim Torah. The first 2,000 years of the world are called Tohu. They're called shapeless and formless. Even though there were, there were buildings, there was technology. Now, you have all the technology that was developed by the Bnei Kayin, and you had Noach with his Teva, you had Migdal Bavel, and yet Chazal called that Tohu, right? And then from Avram Avinu starts the second era, a second set of 2,000 years called Alpayim Torah. It starts with him, because he's declaring the name, Vayikra B'Shem Hashem, Kel Elam. He's revealing the name of Hashem. He's Vayikra B'Shem Hashem, the Shem Shamayim that holds the world together, the Shem Shamayim that allows for individuality at the same time. He was Vayikra B'Shem Hashem. He's declaring and he's revealing that Shem Hashem, right? And which is the 8th. So he gets the mitzvah of Milah, right? That's the 8th mitzvah that humanity got, 8th mitzvah, and by no coincidence, right? It's on that you mekayim that mitzvah on the 8th day, right? It's about revealing. It's about revealing, cutting away at the blockage. The orla is the blockage, cutting away at that blockage that's blocking the spiritual from shining through, blocking the ner Hashem nishmas adam, blocking the aura of the neshama, shining the spirit. Right? Our body is made up of distinct and separate organs. What holds the body together? Our neshama. One neshama for all the different, ramache, varim, and shesag gidim. Right, the neshama is the spirit that holds our body together. Right, and the neshama sometimes is blocked; it doesn't shine through, and that's the orla. There's 2 types of orla, not just the orla in the makam amila, but there's the orla of the heart. Blocking the heart. Orla salev, umaltim is orla levavchem. A person who has orla salev, that's a person whose neshama ain't shining through. That's why it's called that. He has an orla on his heart that's being cut away. His neshama is not shining through. You don't see the good, the divine spark in that person who has Orla Salev, right? And you cut away, and the unifying spirit shines through. Is it any coincidence, right, that Avram Avinu also was into Achdus? The pasuk says, "Echad haya Avram," right? Avram was one, and Chazal darshan she'icha, Echad l'shen icha. He sewed up. He created Achdus. He went around, and when he was preaching, he also he caused people to unite around, the idea of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He pulled the pieces together. Echad haya Avram. Right? And that's what Bris Milah is all about. And this gets deeper, and I'm going to take it deeper in just a second. Right? That the Avram Avinu is, he's the one who reveals, Vayikra B'Shem Hashem Kel Olam. And he begins the Jewish mission, of which is Torah, right, of revealing the Shem Shamayim in the world. And parallel to that, he gets the 8th mitzvah, which is on the 8th day, right, of revealing, right, the or that holds everything together. So now I want to go back to, before I forget, flashback to our Shmona Esrei. We quoted the Gemara Megillah, that the 8th bracha of Shmona Esrei is Rafa'enu. And the Gemara says, why? Because refuah is for Bris Milah. That's Yom Hashmini. That's on the 8th day. Right? Why do people die? Why do people get sick? There is without getting into the minute details, there is one overall idea, behind sickness and death, right? Fragmentation. Right? Death is, the big grand fragmentation, right? Where the neshama fragments from the body. And then what happens to the body after that? What happens to the body? It dissolves. It rots. Right? The whole thing falls apart. right? Fragmentation. So it starts with the neshama fragmenting from the body. And then the body, without any neshama in it to unite, it also decomposes. Like the word itself means, decompose, opposite of composition. It falls apart. Right? Because the neshama holds it together. Right? Sickness is a mini of that. Sickness, your health is breaking down. Right? It's getting fragmented. Things are breaking down. Your health is breaking down. It's mini death. Yeah, right. It's fragmentation. That means refuah. Refuah is the opposite of that. Now, because of Chet Adam Rishon, we have to be grateful that we have refuah at all. Right? Because of Chet Adam Rishon should be that just like people, inevitably, at this point in time until the Tikkun HaShalim, people inevitably age and die. So also it should have been min hadin, right? The logic would have dictated that if you get sick, you should never recover from it. Because we see that, people move towards decomposition. You see as people age, their body is not as tight, and held together. You say, whatever. You have ailments, and the body's not in perfect, harmony like it used to be. They'll tell you, if you're past a certain age, that ailment is age appropriate. Right? Nothing to get alarmed about. It's age appropriate because it's natural. Things start falling apart. Right? And that's because of Chet Adam Rishon, that we're adulterated with evil. Right? Because of the Chet Eitz Hadas that put the Ra that was external inside of us, like everyone knows. And that's what causes death. And that's what causes aging, and which leads to death. And one should be actually amazed, really amazed, that there is such a thing as refuah, because it really is against current nature. Current nature is, as we say, just like in physics, things move to greater states of entropy. Things more to move towards being diffused and separate. Things don't move to a greater state of order; they move to a greater state of disorder, and that's in our, in our lives also. You age, things start falling apart until death and decomposition. Right? Refuah is an amazing thing. It's really shaloka derech hateva when you think about it. Right? That the body regenerates, regroups, regenerates. So Chazal are telling us that's really in the schus of Milah. Milah is something supernatural within the natural world. Right? Revealing the Or HaNeshama, revealing the eighth, revealing the unifying factor. And that's what brought refuah to the world. Refuah came to the world in the merit of Milah. Technically as a response, but it's here from Milah. That means that Milah merits refuah. Milah merits refuah. Because Milah is to break through and reveal the unifying spirit, anti what Chet Adam Rishon did. And that's the secret. What Chazal say that after Adam Rishon ate from the tree, he pulled out his orla. He pulled out his orla, and that's why people started being born arelim, because he understood that he fell to a state that his neshama is hidden, and that's what the orla represents, covering over the light of the neshama, covering over the light of the spirit. A Rabbeinu comes to reveal the spirit, he gets Bris Milah, and that's the unifying spirit. And in the schus of that, there's refuah in the world. Refuah is like, sort of me'ein tchias hamesim. It's coming back from the fragmentation. And la'asid lavo, the power of refuah will be so strong. That's why people won't age and they won't die in the future. It's basically, there's already a hint of it already. Refuah. Refuah is a hint for that one time we'll reach a state when we perfect, the world, and we get the evil out, the evil that causes pirud, the yispardu kol playavin. When we get the evil out of the world, right, things will be able to easily regroup and regenerate. And that's when, in the future, people won't age and die. And refuah is like a little taste of that. And it came into the world in the schus, in response to Bris Milah. Amazing. Right? So refuah is sort of like, regrouping and like a mini tchias hamesim, pulling the pieces back together. Right, and that's in the schus of Bris Milah, that's in the schus of the Torah. Now I'm going to take it one step deeper, right, and talk about that this is not just a fringe benefit, but this was meant to be humanity's mission that became exclusively the mission of Am Yisrael, and you can understand why the Greeks were so insanely jealous, right? You take a look at Ma'aseh Bereishis, right? The animals are also zachar and nekeva. Right, they're also male and female, What does it say by the creation of all the other creatures other than Adam? Other than Adam, right? So they came out of the earth, Zachar and Nekeva, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu had them pop out of the earth. If they were land animals, they popped out of the earth, male and female. They popped out, separately. It's two separate entities that are meant to get together to keep the species going, right? And the same thing by the fish, which were created from the water. Wherever its point of origin was, Zachar and Nekeva popped out, at the same time, but separately. And they're meant to get together and to procreate. What happened by the Adam? Right? Adam, Nivra Yechidi. Man was created alone. One solid entity. Even though he was du partsufim, Chazal say, he was two-faced. Chava was like a whole side of him initially, even like that Manda Omar. He was one solid entity. One solid entity, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu split him. Right? It's an amazing thing that one solid entity, even if he was du partsufim, but still one solid entity, should remind you of the menorah, right? Two different branches, but one solid piece of gold. Right? Man and woman were created from one solid, singular entity. What does that tell you? What does it tell you about Zachar and Nekeva of the Adam as opposed to Zachar and Nekeva by all the life forms? An amazing thing. Zachar and Nekeva by all the life forms, it's just, that's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted reproduction to happen. Now, I'm sure there's, deeper meanings to it also. Right? But what's clear by the Adam, that the Adam was created as one solid unit and then split into two. And therefore the pasuk says, "V'hayu lebasar echad." V'hayu lebasar echad. When they get together, they become one flesh, meaning they go back to their natural oneness. That is amazing. That means the role of humanity, and originally all of humanity was supposed to be the chosen people. HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't want to create a deficient humanity. He only wanted a good humanity. Sort of speak in the words of the Ramchal, and others, if Adam Rishon would have not succumbed, he would have been Klal Yisrael, and that means all of humanity would have been Klal Yisrael, and that's another allusion to what it means Goy Echad Baretz. It means the one nation that was meant to be, the one nation that was meant to be. And there's a lot to add to this, but not right now. Okay, but the one nation that was meant to be, right? If not for the fact that we succumbed and we went from Kosnos Or with an Aleph, right, or we had vestments of light to Kosnos Or, right, with an ayin. We went from light to skin, as Revised cover points out. What's the difference in Gematria between Aleph and Ayin? We used to be creatures of light, then we became creatures of skin. Difference between in Gematria is 1 to 70. Aleph is 1, or with an Aleph is Aleph is 1, or with Ayin is 70. Originally, it was supposed to be just one nation. Everyone would have been what we would call today Jewish. Right, we call there would just be no such a thing as any other humanity. It'd be one type of human being. What we call today Jewish, because of the Chet or the Mauritian. Now there's Ayin, there's Shivim Umos. Right, when we went from light to skin, right, as a result of eating from the Eitz Hadas. Right, but by original intent, it was supposed to be only what we call today Jewish, right, and then that Madrega was lost because of Chet Adam Rishon, and Avram Vinu made a comeback to it. So now the fact that Adam and Chava were originally one solid being, and then separated, and then they have to get back together. Right, that means that the achdus between Zachar and the Nekeva of an Adam, who's called Tselem Elokim, that the achdus between Zachar and the Nekeva of an Adam is parallel to the cosmic unity. It's like pulling the pieces of the cosmos together that are meant to be together. That when a person is Dovak Beishto, right, and he does it l'shem Shemayim. That we say Shechina Shruya B'nem. You know what they're doing at that time? They're all, what they're called, the reverberations that they're causing in the cosmos is causing all the forces of reality to come together in a and unified in a positive way, where things are supplementing each other. There's that's kedusha sazivug, right? The kedusha that there is when Adam and his wife get together, l'shem Shemaim Shechina Shruya B'neim, right? They cause cosmic unity. Right? And that's why it has to be done with chuppah and kiddushin. There's shechina shruya b'neihem. Right? That the unity between Zos and Nekeva is not a pragmatic one, like a business deal. That's the way it might be by the other life forms. By Zos and Nekeva, it's about making cosmic unity. All right, they're getting together, is pulling the pieces of the cosmos together. Everything that's meant to be together is now getting together. Right, and then we have that power and that influence, and that's a function of our being B'Tselem Elokim, right? That we have that influence on all the forces of reality. Right? So now, there's an interesting thing to point out. Abraham, right, and Sarah. It's the first account of married life in the Torah. Do you know that? Have you ever noticed that? 2,000 years. People got married. People lived together and had kids for 2,000 years. Do you ever discuss except for the brief time that Adam and Chava before the Chet? It's something amazing to point out. Right, before, we discuss Adam and Chava's togetherness, before they ate from the Eitz Hadas. After that, we don't discuss how they were, after that, even though they hooked up together after that, and they had Shase, and they had, but, it's not really a topic, right? And then skip 20 generations, and then we have a great deal of detail, Avram and Sarah, their, what they agreed upon, what they may have had a difference of opinion on until Hashem said Shema B'Kola, right? Yitzchak and Rivka, you see what went on over there in the household, Yaakov and his wives, right? For 20 generations, we don't talk about domestic life. Why is that? And then with the Avos, who get Bris Milah, all of a sudden it changes. Torah doesn't spare any details. It talks quite elaborately about their married lives, the life in the home. Because there was no Kedusha in the life in the home before Avram Avinu and Sarah. Right? There was no Kedusha Sazivug. It made a comeback, and it was something that there's Divrei Torah, even in a Jewish home, and the way it is between the man and wife, there's Divrei Torah there, and there's what to learn from how a tzaddik is with his wife. There wasn't any of that for 20 generations. Just like for 20 generations, there was no Bris Milah. So it comes out that, the Bris Milah is that's the eighth, right? And that's the unity that gets revealed, right? And secular science. Now we're finally coming full circle. I hope I didn't lose anybody, right? Right? I hope I didn't put anybody to sleep, right? But now we're finally coming full circle, right? And understanding the... what the Greeks are insanely jealous of, right? Science can't explain cosmic unity, I said before, right? They talk about dark matter. You know what they call dark matter, that there's dark matter? Because they can't see it. They're guessing. Because it's just they can't account for how there's enough gravity to keep the universe from flying apart, right? They don't, because they can't see. Secular science can see the 7 pieces. It can't see the unifying spirit. Right? The Greeks developed the sciences and the arts, and they still cannot get together, right? How the whole world is held together. And they believed that, there may have been originally one first cause. All intellectual of the Avodah Zarah understood for philosophical necessity that there's one original first cause. But after that, it branched out into all these little, Getlach, all these ketchkas, all these little mini gods. Each one takes control. There's the fire god, the water god. So there's one original first cause, but then after that, there are lower gods. We call them governors, senators, right? That each one administers his particular koach because they didn't know how to reconcile how contradictory kochos, should be in a unified system. So each one, there's a fire god and there's a water god, and sometimes they're at war with each other. Right? And they said the first cause is not involved anymore because the universe down the totem pole of reality is not a unified place. There's no way to rectify it. But I'll tell you the bigger problem. You know what the big question there is? The big question that there is on Hashgacha Pratis, why they think the first cause is not involved. Aside the fact that there's schism, and you see it's a fragmented place, and they don't see how you could reconcile the contradictory forces. But there's the one big kasha, the big kasha of the existence of evil. This evil that causes pirud, seemingly it's against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Tov. His Ratzon is to be Meitiv. Where does the evil come from? Right? Right, and that's the biggest question on cosmic unity. If there's cosmic unity and there's all one integrated plan, what about all the bad things that are not according to plan? They're seemingly against God's will. That's the big kasha. Right? And that's along the lines of what Moshe Rabbeinu found difficult. Right? Miksha Tases Menor. We said from the, that halacha, that has to be one solid piece of gold, Chazal say, alludes to the difficulty that he had, with envisioning the menorah. And the two are related. The Pshat and the Drush are related. Right? Because he had a hard time understanding the secret of the cosmic unity. One of the things Moshe Rabbeinu didn't understand is Tzadik V'Ralo, Rasha V'Tovlo, the Gemara says. And that's alluded to in the Miksha Achas, all one plan, all from the same Ribbon Shalom, all from the same Ribbon Shalom. Right? It was the Miksha Achas of the Nor represents these big kashas that we have, Tzadik V'Ralo, Rasha V'Tovlo. It goes against the unified plan. The unified plan should be good only for the tzaddikim. Right? And Ra for the Rishoyim, they have to be punished. There shouldn't even be Rishoyim in the first place. Right? That was what the Miksha Achas revealed. That was what was kosher. Right? That it's still one unified world. And the truth is the Torah does have answers. The Torah has answers for everything. Right? Except that not all the answers have been revealed yet. Right? But but there are answers. Right? And and eventually all those answers will be revealed. Right? Be'ezrat Hashem b'mheira b'yameinu. Right? But even without getting to these fundamental questions, the Torah is able to provide, a understanding how the one first cause did not relinquish control. That one God is in full control, and everything is part of his integrated plan. All right, that's what the Torah is, and the Torah is destined to explain to us even these finer points that we can't wrap our heads around. And that's what was represented by the solid piece of gold that Moshe Rabbeinu found difficult. Right? That there is unity, and even the Ra, that's anti-unity, is part of the integrated plan. It's also part of the integrated plan, right? It's all one integrated plan, and that's the wonderful thing that the Torah could explain that nothing else could explain. Nothing else could explain it. The secular sciences branch out into separate disciplines: biology, chemistry, physics, separate and distinct. Right? From a secular, pure scientific perspective, you could identify the separate pieces of reality. You can't see the unified field theory that really holds it together. That's in the Torah. Now, with this, we can understand an amazing thing. Bris Milah, right, and the Yevonim, So first of all, you'll find throughout Chazal that Gadol Milah she nichrasu aleh Yud Gimel Brisos. It's a lashon throughout Chazal that the Torah, mentions Bris Milah 13 times, and that's going to be a tremendous milah to the mitzvah of Bris Milah. Nichrasu aleh Yud Gimel Brisos. What's Gematria of Yud Gimel? Echad. Because the light that's revealed through Bris Milah, and through Bris Milah, there's Kedushas HaZivug. It brings out Achdus. Gematria Echad. It brings out the unifying spirit. From the Torah Achas, which comes from Hashem Echad. Okay? And I'm sure you've already jumped ahead in your own minds and you figure out that that's why the Torah adds up at the end of the Chanukah Sabayis, adds up all the korbanos, that what's revealed at the end of Chanukah Sabayis is the unifying spirit that's greater than the sum of the parts, that causes all the parts to unify, and that's the 8th day of Chanukah, the 8th. The 8th is the unifying spirit that pulls it all together, and that's why we have this halacha on the 8th day. Pull all the wicks of all the days together. Now they're not separate days anymore. On the 8th is revealed the unifying spirit that pulls all the days together. That's why on the 8th day, right, just like we laid the sum total of the korbanos, all the wicks come together. The unifying spirit of all the separate days is revealed on the 8th, right, and we burn all the wicks together. All right, so, and that's, Bris Milah is, which is the 8th, is Yud Gimel Brisos. Do you know, we had 2 encounters with the Greeks. One with the Egyptian, after Alexander the Great died, the Greek Empire schism, it fractured into the Greek Egyptians and the Greek Assyrians. Right, Ptolemy, that was the Egyptian Greek king, as opposed to Antiochus, the Syrian Greek king. So a story happened. There was an earlier encounter that predates the story of Hanukkah, right? And that was the story of Talmi HaMelech that forced us to translate the Torah into Greek. Right? It was a terrible thing that our Torah, went out. We suffer from that. We suffer from that ad hayom hazeh. How did the Christians get their hands on the Bible? How? The Targum HaShivim. That's how the Goyim got access to our Torah. And, Christianity came from that. Islam came from that. Only bad things came from that, in the short run. In the long run, it'll all be integrated in Hashem's plan, and the Rambam talks about this, but, we've already spoken at great length, so let's try to go full circle and close. How many things did they have to change for Talmi? That he's a guy. He doesn't understand. He doesn't have the Torah Sheba'al Peh. So things that every Cheder Yingel knows because of Torah Sheba'al Peh, Talmi, he doesn't have the Torah Sheba'al Peh, so they had to change things, right? So as not to offend him, and or things they just couldn't understand. How many things did they have to change for him? Chazal say 13. 13, they had to mistranslate 13 things purposely, so as not to offend him or not to confuse him. Gematria echad, because a guy can't see the achdus in Torah. Right, with the achdus, which is what the Torah reveals, a guy is blind to it. So they had to change from 13 things. Gematria echad, like Bris Milah's Nichras Valeh Yud Gimel Brisas. Come 60 some odd years later, when we had our brush, with the Assyrian Greeks, Antiochus and his people, right? They breached into the Beis HaMikdash. How many breaches did they make? Ufartzu Chomos Migdalai. How many? 13. They broke in 13 places. Right, because they were anti-echad, but where secularists, they were so insanely jealous because it's so obvious what science could never explain, what philosophy could never explain, right? How reality is a unified place. Everything is shem shamayim, and a person in his own individual life also. What do Chazal say? Kol ma'asecha yiyu l'shem shamayim. Everything you do should be l'shem shamayim. It should also be the unifying force in our lives. We should eat l'shem shamayim. We should sleep l'shem shamayim. There should be unity in lives, not be fractured. Part shem shamayim, part not. Kol ma'asecha l'shem shamayim. And just like it's that way in the individual, it's that way in the cosmos. There is something beyond that holds it all together and brings it all back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It shows that from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and brings it all back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's what they were insanely jealous of. And that's what Bris Milah represents. Right? And that's why they legislated against Bris Milah. Right? We could go on, but I'm just going to end off with one last point because I think I've tested your patience too much already. Right? But with just one last point. Everyone asked the kasha. The famous kasha of the Beis Yosef. It's a kasha of the Beis Yosef. Right? Hanukkah's 8 days. Why? Because miraculously the oil burnt for 8 days. Not true. Not true. Only 7. There was enough oil for 1 day. So there's only 7 days that were a miracle. 1 day is not a miracle. What's the answer to that? Like we're explaining, this is the answer. We have to show that the world is a unified place. Right? Teva and Nes, the 1 day that's natural, and the 7 days that were supernatural, all from the same God. It's not that, nature, it's not like nature is earthly and doesn't belong to Hashem. Hashem only does miracles. No. All equally from Hashem. All equally from Hashem. It's all a unified place. There's no difference between Teva and Nes. It's all one unified universe, all one unified Hashgacha Pratis, and we have to acknowledge that. Not say, well, Teva, runs itself. HaKadosh Baruch Hu intervenes and does Nisan. No, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does Teva and Nes equally. And Teva and Nes also, without getting told, these are an integrated system. They don't contradict each other. They work in full cooperation. Right? They're like different laws of physics, all working in the perfect cooperation in a unified thing. And we have to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the Teva just as much as we have to thank him for Nisim. And you know what? That's what Hoda'ah means. And with this we'll come full circle, right? Hoda'ah, right? To give thanks, right? To give thanks also means to admit. Hoda'ah, like Hoda'ah's Baal Din. It means to acknowledge, deny what you could have easily denied, you're admitting anyway. All right, we have to thank Hashem for the teva, mean we have to admit. We have to admit that it comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not any less than Nisim. The world is an integrated universe. There's only one God, there's only one Hashgacha Pratis, and Teva and Nes are all equally from it, but Teva is a little bit less obvious because we got used to it. We only relate to the supernatural as coming from Hashem. It's terrible. People say, I had some real Hashgacha Pratis. They talk about how they had a really unexpected good turn. Chas v'shalom, everything's Hashgacha Pratis. Everything. Right? It's not that when you have a good day, you're having a day of Hashgacha Pratis. It's always, it's perpetual. It's all from the same Ribbon Shalom. And that's something we have to admit to and be thankful of. And that's where we get back to the Miksha Achas. Right? That we also, at the future, the Navi says, Otcha Hashem ki anafti. We're going to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for all the hard times. We're going to thank Him. What does it mean, thank? Dafka Otcha, not hallow. We're not going to praise, we're going to thank. Because we're going to admit, Hoda as in we're going to be Moda, we're going to admit that it was for our good, because that's what's yet to be revealed. How even the Ra, that seemingly seems anti-good, and seems to be the big kasha of how the world could be a unified place if there's so much evil in the world, we're going to be thankful, and we're going to admit how it was for our own good. And that's how Hoda makes unity. Hoda is, you could have denied, Gemara says, Modi Michalpi, if they admit to each other, it means they were initially when they were in the Machlokas, and they reconciled. Umaydim is that Michlau the Pligi, that they were formerly in the Machlokas, but now they got together. Hoda is the grand unifier. When we give Hoda, it's the grand unifier, where we're being thankful and admitting that all the hard times were for our good also, and the universe is all one unified place. I think we answered all our questions. Alicht Chanukah. I'll stay online if anyone wants to ask a question.
Good call. 1 second. I just have to tell you that your genie, I don't know how you say the word, but your genius just comes through, because you could probably go on for 3 hours.